And welcome to another episode of Feed My Sheep. Just watching that thing go round and round as we wind into the program. It's now the 10th of January, and welcome. Tonight we're finishing off part 2. We've had so much activity since the 5th when we did our previous program. So we're doing 2 programs today, so this is part 2. And before we begin all of our programs, while we were doing this, we had another earthquake in, where was that last earthquake?
Turkey?
Yes, Turkey. We had a large earthquake today in Turkey, and we'll get to that one. That one, we're expecting we'll have some damage reports with that one. It's large enough. And they have some building construction issues there. Not necessarily the strongest buildings. But we'll get to that after a prayer because all of our programs are dedicated to our Heavenly Father service. So, Heavenly Father, we thank you. We come before you humbly again. We thank you that you have this program for us to share, to warn people on. And we pray that we do a good job in your service. And so we ask that you have Jesus lead us. And Jesus, we thank you for continuing to share this work with us. I don't think we're all that good at this on our own, but with a little help, it makes a big difference. Thank you, Holy Spirit, for your discernment of truth, for your understanding that you bring. And thank you for Jesus. Thank you for leading us to all the information that we need. In your holy name, amen. So a little crossover. I think we finished off in, if this will open up, Chiang Mai, Thailand, with a big VLF wave today. So that was this morning, actually this afternoon. So Chiang Mai, Thailand had a big VLF wave go through there. We don't see that very often. I think we've once before seen a VLF wave in the last 2 years or the last year and a half out of Chiang Mai, but very unusual. Now, we're getting into a mystery wave. So I'm going to take up the first little bit of the program, and we've got a wave that shows up. These aren't large enough to propagate. We had a program showing these once before, and these are all over the world. So we don't know what's causing these, but they're not big enough to be anything but man-made and directed at all of these different locations in some manner. And we don't know what manner it is. These could be directed energy, but from what source we don't know. So we'll have to leave that for speculation. Anyway, we're going to begin with Barbados, and there was about 6 Barbados and 6 sites altogether in the Caribbean that showed this double bump wave. And last time it was a double bump wave as well. And we're just seeing the beginnings of an earthquake coming across, and this is an earthquake on, I believe, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. I think it was supposedly a 5.3. It's actually more like a 6. And this is what it looked like in Florida, this double bump wave, and there's what the earthquake looked like in Florida while we're at it. Up on the top, we're seeing the tail end of the previous earthquake that we were showing on the last program. And here's that double bump wave looking from Johnson Island. Now, this was earlier while that earthquake still held up at the top. I can't remember where that one was. I'd have to go back and look. But you can see this double bump wave, and this is at Johnson Island on the front page of the seismogram chart. When I opened it up, when you click on it, you get it at the more current time. So you can see there's no earthquake showing up in this area. This is, and we're on the, I'll click on it, well, that doesn't help. We are on, just got to have a look at this myself. I'll get back to that. That's on the 11 o'clock line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 hours later to that. Yeah, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 hours. So this is 9. So this is 3 hours later. So 3 hours later, this earthquake shows up, and that wave that should be in here is missing. In Kapapa, Hawaii, I won't try and blow this one up because it's the front page as well. We have that same double bump signature, slightly different, but in the same time location. We see the earthquake showing up here, and that wave has disappeared. So there's the earthquake showing up there. There should be a double bump VLF wave right in here. It's missing. And Midway Island, you can see that's it right there. I mean, this is a big disturbed area, but that's a big signal inside of it. It's easily made out. You can make that out quite easily. And we get to the updated Midway seismogram, and it's missing. When is that supposed to be there? Well, in UTC time, Pitcairn Island was not changed. That should be on the 2000 line, between 2030 and 2040. We go back up here. There's 2030 right there, 2030 to 2040. So this data in here has been substituted. It's been changed. Why? I don't know. They're hiding. I believe they're hiding the cause of this VLF wave, which was larger in some places. This is how large it was from Rarotonga Island. You can clearly see this, even though this frame doesn't blow up. You can clearly see this, and the earthquake doesn't show up yet. We do have this smaller earthquake up top, right? And here we have this smaller earthquake up top. This one now we have this is the earthquake from a very distant view. But here at 2032 to 38, 39, that signal is missing. Okay, there's the earthquake there. You can tell it's the same seismogram. Same earthquake as on the previous seismogram, and that wave is missing. So why is that wave missing? They're hiding data. Why are they hiding data? Looking from Machias, Maine, there we have it again. And looking from Troy, New York, we see it again. But now in Troy, New York, they've changed things up. You can see that this is steady every hour. We've got a wiggly baseline wave all the way through. We have this little signal, and then it smooths right out for over an hour. And it smooths out coming into this line, and then so they actually turned off the seismogram for this and replaced that data. The data that should have been here is missing, and quite clearly so. And when we look at Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts, we can see there's an awful lot of wave. There's not a minute that goes by that's not showing wave activity at Chestnut Hill in Massachusetts. There's a lot of activity. Every time we show it, it's a very active site. And what do we see here? Over an hour, that same over an hour period of smoothed out baseline, finishing right at 22, 8 minutes and 30 seconds, something like that. And if we go back to the previous, this one, not this one, 28 minutes and 30, or 22 and 8 minutes and 30 seconds. Same thing, same time period. So they're replacing data for the same time on these two seismograms. I don't know why, but they are. They're clearly doing it. We see the signal is there and unchanged at Weston, Massachusetts. We see the same signal in Westport, Connecticut, unchanged. They left it in on this one. And they left it in at a whole bunch of other locations. And I'm not going to show every seismogram because this is all over the States. There's 32 sites if you include Kapapa, Hawaii, and Florida, which I showed earlier, there's 32 sites in the states. I think it's some 28 states or 27 states, something like that, that show this signal. That also shows up on Johnson Island, Midway Island. So it's showing up in the Pacific. There's no reason for that signal to be showing up at roughly the same time, within the same 10-minute time frame, in such widespread parts of the world. It's too small to transfer, and it takes time to transfer. So it's being directed and applied to all of these locations at basically the same time. So we have other locations. We have, I can't blow up that one. I can blow it up in a minute. But Alum Creek State Park in Ohio, Waterville, Maine, Binghamton in New York, Blacksburg in Virginia, Cedar Bluff in Kansas, Corbin, Virginia, Ely, Minnesota, and Grayling, Michigan. Now, Grayling, Michigan's got a tremendous amount of tremors going through it. There's a lot of stress in Grayling, so I'm showing Grayling as part of this. And we can clearly see this mid-Atlantic earthquake here that they call a 5.3, and that's easily a 6, maybe a 6.2. And other sites that we see this this low amplitude VLF wave, double bump wave showing up, Hopedale, Illinois, Haley, Idaho, Idaho Springs, Colorado, Junction, Texas, the Jewel Farm in Wisconsin. This is the Jewel Farm. You can see there's tremors throughout. Just as there's tremors all over Michigan, there's tremors all over Wisconsin as well. So there's VLF waves all the way through. There's fault shifting going on in this area. And there's that double bump wave just before the 30-minute mark, 29 and 30 seconds, something like that. And so we look to the other areas. We've got Kingsville, Texas, the LASA array. That's for detecting distant activity. They've got a ring of different seismometers there. Lake Ozonia, New York, Lakeview Retreat, Alabama, Mount Ida in Arkansas, New Hope in South Carolina. This is New Hope. Gives you a good look at that mid-Atlantic earthquake as well. And you can see underneath there's mixed in other waves. But there's just a tremendous amount of activity. When we said there was a lot of pressure on the Earth, there was a lot of pressure. But now we're seeing this, what seems to be cause for concern. Maybe it's extra applied pressure by whatever man-made device is creating this double bump wave that they're trying to hide. And they are clearly trying to hide this. So we're going to now add Ogallala, Nebraska, the Peaks Kenny State Park in Maine, Red Lodge, Montana, the State Center in Iowa, the site at the Great Sands Dune National Park in Colorado, and this is Tazewell, Tennessee, all having this double bump wave. And we're seeing that, as it takes me time to load all of this. And we're seeing the next earthquake coming in, and this is just starting to show up from Turkey. All right? That's the P wave coming in from Turkey. The P wave travels much, much faster than the S wave and arrives first, and it shows you that there's some distance involved. And so now we're back to some other major activity. We're seeing VLF waves from Chile. This is from earlier. And everything looks quite a bit different looking from Chile because we're picking up different activity. And we're going to have a look at some of the Chile activity that we've had recently. I've got, as I said, some new seismographs. And this is what we had at the Chile border, North Chile border with Peru and Bolivia. Right up in the corner, and this is where there's a tremendous amount of earthquake activity right at this junction. So this is happening right close to the site, so it actually appears larger than it is because it's so close to the site. Very, very active location, but they're not reporting anything close to the number of earthquakes that are actually showing. You can see that all of these ones are in a reportable range. That's a reportable sized earthquake. In the twos, we're not looking at massive size, but this is getting into the, this is probably a 3.0. This is probably a 3.0. These are into the 5 range anyway. I'm not huge earthquakes, not big damaging earthquakes, but big enough. This is one of the, this one is bigger. This one here, I think we had as a Chile 6 point, I think this was a 6.8. 6.8, 6.9, but this is a follow-up earthquake down here. Anyway. Oh, no, that was a previous day. Anyway, doesn't matter. This is the 8th, showing more activity on the 8th. It's good-sized activity. And 9th, it slowed down, but we got these two very odd lines. No P waves. These are a couple of explosions. And why we have two explosions, you can see they don't even look like an earthquake. They're just vertical, straight up and down, bang. Now this might be the center line here for them. There's a little tiny bit of a bump, but they're so large you can't really center them up either. But they look to be two explosions in that area. And, that's a big explosion to get you up into the 2.5, 2.5 magnitude earthquake range, something like that. Anyway, other matters. Waterbury, Vermont, following earthquake activity that we had up here, we're seeing VLF waves come through Waterbury, Vermont. So there's another series of VLF waves. Now we have from Waterbury, we're seeing the Mid-Atlantic Ridge earthquake here, and we're seeing the arrival of the China earthquake, and you can see some coarseness in the waveform that's down here. That's showing some depth associated with this earthquake. And we're going to get into that earthquake a little bit more, but first we're looking at Nacogdoches, Texas, and this is the arrival of the earthquake down in the bottom here. So it's getting on to the seismogram just a little bit, but I believe this is the Mid-Atlantic earthquake. But it's hard to make out, it's so disturbed. But there's now 7 or 8 hours of activity. I haven't gone back to look at this for the last 2 hours, but this was ongoing activity at the time of loading this seismogram. So big move through Nacogdoches, Texas, big fault shift. Mission Creek, Montana, and this is showing activity. I think this was from the 8th, and it was really building activity, and this is magma-related activity in Mission Creek, Montana. That's what I understand it to be. Now, the Stillwater mine on the 8th had a very unusual signal, and you can see it's got a staccato nature to it, very regular. So are they doing a bunch of drilling or something else in that mine? I'm not sure. So I'm not going to say that this is a bunch of earthquake activity at a mine site. I believe this is an active mine, so this may be mining related. But unusual to see. And this is a Stillwater mine on the 6th. So we can see some of that staccato regularity building down below. And it was probably busy all the way through here, but it was turned off in the middle of the seismogram. Or knocked offline. Now, this is different on the 8th. This is Lion Mountain in Montana, and we had this type of activity show up. And we had a lot of fine vibration, a lot of pressure, crustal pressure showing up already in these fine vibrations leading into this. And then we got this larger vibrational activity. And that looks like fault shift to me. And so pay attention to the type of activity. This is nearby Elliston on the 8th, and showing the same type of activity, not as dramatic. We get back to what was happening at Lion Mountain. It's only maybe a third of the total activity, so it's probably from further away. Here at Mount Belmont, we don't often see fault shift at Mount Belmont, but we're seeing that same as Mount Elliston right through here, and the same activity pattern through here. So we can look at this. This is between, in comparison between Elliston and Lion Mountain in activity types. Lewis and Clark Caverns had the same period of activity on the 8th, very similar, and it had that same staccato breakup. So we had some very large activity in here because, and following it, this is, we can see, going here, the majority of the activity is green, okay? You don't even have to look at the timeline. We're in the same. I'm looking at back signatures, and here's from Helena Valley, and this is the York Bridge site, which goes right, this is going right up the river through Helena, and there's that same activity. It's prominent. It's more prominent in Helena than other places because this seismogram is turned down to about 5% or less. You don't normally see any activity at Helena because it's so badly turned down. It's so far under the amplitude. And that's why it shows the activity so much better. So big fault shift went through the Helena Valley, and it showed up at multiple other sites in Montana. Now this is Helena Valley York Bridge on the 7th, and multiple of the sites that I previously showed you showed movement on the 7th as well. So we had a lighter shift on the 7th, a heavier shift on the 8th, and a big long shift. This is Helena Valley York Bridge on the 9th. So this continued. This was a 3-day event. Periods for 3 days were shifting in Montana. And this is the Lewis and Clark Caverns on the 9th. So that included a distant fault shift, like it went for a larger distance. This is Mount Belmont. Again, it doesn't often show fault shifts, but it did on this day and the previous 2 days. And Elliston on the 9th also showed that same fault shift. So we had a long, hundreds of miles of fault shifting in Montana on the 7th, 8th, and 9th, coincidentally shifting at 4 or 5 sites. We had Elliston, Belmont, Lewis and Clark, Helena Valley. I think that's it. So, yeah, we didn't count Stillwater Mine or Mission Creek. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. No, 5 sites. Lion Mountain, Elliston, Belmont, Lewis and Clark Caverns, and Helena Valley York Bridge site. So that's big. And now, while I was picking up all this other activity, we had another. This is why we broke into another program, because wouldn't you know, while we were loading our previous programs up, including this one, loading it on to preloading the program, so we have a fast delivery, we had this show up, and this is Ankara, Turkey, having a large earthquake. And this was reported, I think, as a 6.6, I think. So this gives us an opportunity to use our new seismograms. Now, keep in mind, when you're looking at these, Ankara, Turkey often has these VLF waves. It's near a fault. There's a fault right close to there that is shifting with VLF waves so much of the time. Well, here it stopped shifting. You can see just leading into the earthquake, it stopped. And this is the period when that mid-Atlantic ridge earthquake shows up. And so we get a little bit of a signal, and if it's getting all the way to Turkey from the mid-Atlantic ridge, that's why I'm saying that this is at least a 6. And it's probably more like a 6.4, 6.5 to be this large all the way over in Turkey. And so while this earthquake body wave is going on, still showing up, and that's another thing that tells us it's larger, because we've got a body wave that lasts over an hour. You don't get that. It's got to be larger. It's got to be about 6.5 range to have that long of a body wave. So total duration matters in this as well. So here we have Turkey setting on or having a large wave, and this is another long fault rupture event, where it's a series of earthquakes along the fault. And we're going to look at this a little bit more in depth here. Now we're able to use the geophone seismograms from sorry, I can't remember the name of it right now. But anyway, they're geophone Potsdam, the Potsdam system. And this is looking from Sparta, Turkey, so we're quite close, and these are 2 hours per line, or 1/2 hour per line, 2 lines per hour, rather. So there's the earthquake, and this is a very active site. This has got a lot of vibrations much of the time. Turkey is a very active region for seismic activity, so this isn't surprising. Now, moving over to Jordan, Jordan has also been very active with magma with a background signal that's periodic as well. So Jordan looks set up for some big volcanic activity as well. But we haven't watched it for a long time. This is from the Gor Hadith site. And this is looking at the Turkey earthquake, and now we're seeing it with a little better perspective. You can see that the signal size drops quite a bit. Well, that's because we're looking higher up at the waveform. This one is catching, it's so close to the site that it makes it look larger. So basically it has the same effect as catching it across this level here. And it makes it look larger because we don't see the perspective that we see at the top. So this earthquake has a 3.5 minute S wave, and that makes this a solid 7. Okay. We had a previous earthquake we showed you that was a 6.8 and had a 3 minute and 20 second S wave. This one's got a full 3.5 minute S wave. We're calling it a solid 7. We look at Garni and Armenia, try and back this up, and we again see that 3.5 minute S wave in this period. We go elsewhere, we go to Kongsberg, Norway, and now this is over 3.5 minutes, but this is the deep aspect, part of the deep aspect of the earthquake. This is deeper still, but or as deep. And you can see the coarseness of the wave through here. So there's some depth at the beginning of this, and each successive wave gets a little closer to the other. So this is an ascending earthquake, starts deeper and comes up shallower. And then we can also see that this is a series event along the plate with separation showing up between the following earthquakes. So moving further away helps define earthquakes much of the time. And we're looking from Kenya now, and Kenya shows us that earlier earthquake out on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So now we're looking from the other side of the ocean. Instead of picking it up on the US side, we're picking it up on the Africa side. And by going in this direction, it makes the Turkey earthquake look smaller. But it shows us that there's multiple sets of waveforms going through here as well. So multiple sets of S waves, lots of follow-up earthquakes, and those are all large. And now we're finishing inland of the Mendocino, and I didn't show you a whole bunch of these seismograms because I've loaded so much already, but this type of activity is still being seen at Black Butte. I looked at that today, and we have this type of signal again. We see this also over at Myers Flat. We're seeing the Hayward continuing to slip, but not to this degree. I haven't seen any offshore signals offshore of San Francisco recently, so that's good. But lots of activity daily on the Hayward and on... there's a fault that runs from Sacramento, just southeast of Sacramento, right up to Clear Lake, and I'm able to seismically track a fault through there. And the Woodland site is showing activity every day. And other sites are a little less active, but big activity in Northern California, that remains. And we're seeing it with a lot of earthquakes too. We had so many earthquakes on the Blanco fracture zone, and that was transfer coming up from the South Pacific, equatorial Pacific area, with earthquakes starting in Fiji, Samoa, and in New Guinea, in the Band of Sea, or no, the Bismarck Sea, I think it was. Anyway, a lot of earthquakes near the Solomons, and all of that energy also transfers north. If it transfers to the east over to South America, and it travels west to Indonesia, and then transfers up along the Ring of Fire, and travels south down to New Zealand, it's certainly not going to be constrained and fail to go north. And it takes a while for that force to collect and push its way through, but it pushed its way through to the Blanco fracture zone and gave us something in the neighborhood of 120 3.5 and greater earthquakes. And we could see that on seismograms. And there was lots of 4s and lots of 5s mixed in with those, and certainly no shortage of 6s in there. Even though those weren't significantly reported, they were quite easily identified on seismographs. So there was a lot of earthquakes, a lot of heavy activity out there, and it's taken time to do a direct stress transfer into California. And now we're seeing that. And that's coming in some, I don't know, it's 20 days later or something like that. So most people are not connecting those two. They're saying, why is all that force coming into California? Well, it's coming in on a transfer not just along the Mendocino Ridge, but below it as well, because that whole plate section of the Pacific that's bounded by the Mendocino at the north end, and then you go south, and I don't remember the name of the fault that's below it, but it crosses most of the ocean as well, all the way into the South Pacific, and that whole plate segment can transfer force separate from the rest of the Pacific Ocean, because the Pacific Ocean is broken into massive plate segments from east to west as well. All right, so sections of the Pacific Ocean can actually get shoved around a little bit relative to the other ones, and that's why there are ridges. They have ridges between the plate sections because they move independently of each other to some degree. And that otherwise you wouldn't have ridges. If they never moved, then there would be no force to cause the ridges to appear. You can have faults that don't have ridges that stay stable for a long time, but usually those are on land, and those are eroded away, so you can't really see where the fault is unless you get up and examine them quite closely. But in the ocean, you look for faults by the ridges and by the volcanoes along the ridges. And there's certainly lots of volcanoes along the ridges of the Mendocino and along the ridge that's south of it. I'll look up the name of that for our next program. But we talked about on the 5th that we had the highest crustal pressures that we've seen, ever seen, with BLF waves moving in so many different areas, and big activity. We had big volcanic activity as well going along with this, so there was no shortage of pressure on the volcanoes either. We had a new volcano flash up in the Galapagos as part of this. And before any agencies decide to show up and check out, find out how we track the rocket so closely, to get within 2,000 miles, when you look at the size of the Earth, to be within 2,000 miles of where it would land and just do it as a shot in the dark, that's pretty good aiming. So I think we just got a little bit lucky on that one. So don't come over from an agency looking to see what our source is. Our source was about as effective as this spinning little disc here, and yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching us. If you're liking our programs, give us a thumbs up, subscribe. We would like to see our numbers jump one more and get above 600, so that would be nice. We were hoping it would kind of happen by New Year's, but there's been a slight delay, and we haven't put a lot of programs up, so that's all good. Um, Recommend us to your friends. There's not a lot of programs that are showing seismology using hard science as a foundation for what they're stating. So we cover the science a little harder than some, but we also have a God-centered perspective. We're drawing into end times. We're certainly seeing the birth pangs. We're seeing the most unusual series of events, some preposterous proposals from fields of science and medicine, and claims that are quite outlandish. I've got a 35-year background as a paramedic and research into natural remedies, and I know that immune system function is exceptionally important to good health in many areas, as is the ability of circulation and other things. And there are many things that can make you feel and be active a lot longer and feel a lot better, and they're not usually a mandated process from the government. So I can't get into this too deeply because there's oversight, shall we say, that would probably not be in favor of it. But don't take the cookies is my advice. Unless you bake the cookies yourself, you should always know what you put in your system. And when you can't look at an ingredients list, for something that normally has an ingredients list, you should be worried about that type of cookie. There's something rotten in that cookie if you can't even get at the ingredients list. All right, so we'll see you next time on Feed My Sheep, Earthquake Reports, and more. Bye for now.